when people say, how do you define kindness? I think defining kindness is difficult. You just know when somebody's kind. You also know when somebody's unkind. And I think it's the most powerful tool we have to actually change our lives.
Hello and welcome to the Women of the Future podcast, a podcast made in collaboration with the Women of the Future programme, a platform built to unlock a culture of kindness and collaboration among leaders, as well as support and celebrate the successes of women. I'm Kim Rowell and I won the media category at their awards in 2018 in recognition of my continued work as a commissioner, producer and children's author, particularly within the mental health remit. I'll be talking to my guests on this podcast about their careers, who or what gave them their first big break, their successes, failures and inspirations along the way, and how they came to be a part of the Women of the Future network. It seemed only sensible that we launch this podcast with the woman who launched the Women of the Future initiative herself, the one and only Pinky Lilani. Nusrat Mahboob Lilani, known as Pinky, is an author, motivational speaker, food expert and women's advocate. Founder and chair of several awards recognising influential women and leaders, including the annual Women of the Future Awards and the Asian Women of Achievement Awards. She was appointed an OBE in 2007 for services to charity and a CBE in 2015 for services to women in business. She's been named on BBC Radio 4's Women's Hour Power List, as well as one of the 30 most powerful Muslim women in Britain by The Times and Emil magazine. She is also now the first guest on our brand new podcast.
I was very lucky. I was born into a very loving, caring and a fairly privileged family in Calcutta. And I went to an Irish convent where my mother had been. And Calcutta was fairly like a paradise, I think, on earth. It was one of those towns that the British had come to and it was beautifully laid out. And it was a very, very happy upbringing. So, we used to go to the club to swim and lots of parties because, in India everybody entertains. And so we were constantly having parties or going to parties. Had lots of really good friends. So it was a very happy childhood, full of sunshine and, going on family holidays with cousins and meeting up people. So it was very people-oriented.
Did you have brothers and sisters? Or?
I do. I have an older sister and a younger brother, and I'm very close to both of them.
How did they call you Pinky? How did that come about? Was it a nickname? Or?
It's a very common nickname in India, and I think anybody who's slightly pinkish or, kind of lighter than the general population is often referred to as Pinky. They have these strange nicknames, and I know I'm often asked that, and so many people that I know are actually nicknamed Pinky. In fact, the ex-Prime Minister of Pakistan, Benazir Bhutto, her nickname was Pinky Bhutto.
Yeah.
So it's really, really quite common.
So your family had been in the country for a very long time?
Yes, my family were from Bombay and Calcutta, and then my grandfather had moved to Calcutta where my mother was born, and then my father came there, and so they were quite well established in Calcutta.
You studied in India, didn't you? So
I did.
How did you come to England?
Well, I did my education, my schooling in Calcutta, then went on to do my degree and then did a postgraduate. Mm-hmm. And then I actually had, a semi-arranged marriage where I met my husband who was visiting from the UK, and his mother was very keen he marry a good Indian girl. He was living in the UK and I think she was afraid that he may go off track. He had been married before to a Dutch girl and that hadn't worked. And so my husband met me and we got married in 3 weeks. So he obviously had done no due diligence whatsoever because he thought he'd got this good wife who could cook, and I'd never been inside the kitchen because we had an amazing chef in our house in Calcutta.
How did you feel about the arranged marriage? Did you like him? I mean, was it a good thing?
It wasn't totally arranged in the fact that I did have a say, so I did meet him. There are arranged marriages in India where you don't even meet the person and you don't have a say, the parents arrange everything. I did meet him, I wasn't sure, and I was told you can't keep meeting him. You can just meet him a couple of times, that's it, because your reputation will be ruined if you keep trying to see a guy and not making up your mind. And so I did like him, but I wasn't really totally sure. But actually took a huge leap of faith and said yes, because it sounded quite interesting to be coming to the UK. It was very exciting at that point of my life. And I've never looked back.
So he was based in the UK, so the move was to go back with him to the UK to to be married and
Absolutely.
have a family?
He was a chartered accountant who was working in the UK, and so we got married very quickly, and he had to come back, and so I went back to Calcutta where I lived. We got married in Bombay, and I packed up my meagre belongings and came with 2 suitcases to England.
Wow.
And it was very exciting. I came in absolutely the depth of winter, and I'd never ever been in temperatures below 10 degrees, so it was like -1.
Wow.
But I was really quite excited at that stage. I'd never seen snow in my life, and it was very exciting to come.
So it was more excitement than fearful. It wasn't, you went... How old were you?
I was 23 then.
That's quite young.
So I wasn't scared, I wasn't fearful, I wasn't even worried that I was leaving my entire family behind, because I came here, I was very excited. We'd learned so much about England when we were growing up in school. And so, there was a lot of excitement, a lot of curiosity, a lot of, I'm going to do this for the first time kind of thing. And that was really exciting.
Good. And you said when you first met your husband that you couldn't cook, but cookery became one of your biggest passions, didn't it?
Absolutely. I love eating, and I love inviting people over.
Yeah.
So I think you have to know how to cook if you don't have a retinue of servants, which I had nobody to help. And so I learned to cook very badly at first, but every time I went back to India, I would go into the kitchen with our cook and ask him for some tips. So I built up my repertoire of dishes that I used to do, and went on then after about 10 years of entertaining people, taking the courage to ask people over and making sure I got it right. And I think people love being invited to people's homes. So I think what you cook is actually irrelevant at some stage. But of course, if you can cook a wonderful meal and have interesting people, it's a really great formula for making friends. So I started inviting lots of people, mums who I'd meet outside the school, because I wasn't working at that time. I was very much a yummy mummy, so I'd be standing outside the school wanting to talk to anyone who'd want to talk to me. I still do that. And and one day somebody asked me if I would teach Indian cookery to adults, and that's how my career in cookery started.
Okay, and so obviously you specialised in Indian food. That was your...
Well, that was the cookery I knew best, but I cook all kinds of food. I love cooking, so now I can cook, Italian, Chinese, Malaysian, whatever. But that time I just stuck to Indian because I felt I had an advantage.
And I mean, I've heard stories, because obviously you've written some cookery books, haven't you? You've gone on to do that. I heard a story about you walking into a bookshop and wanting them to take your book on, and you actually started to cook there or something. Is that right? Or is
I wanted to sell. I didn't realise I'd have these thousands of copies, and how was I going to get rid of them? I hadn't visualised that much.
Yeah.
I thought, I know so many people, I'll sell the books, but, I don't know thousands of people. And so, of not having sold any more than 50, I didn't have publishers, so I was ringing up the cookery shops. No, they weren't cookery shops, sorry. I was ringing up the bookshops and saying, will you stock my book? And then one of them felt quite sorry for me because of the desperation in my voice. And I said, look, if I bring my books and I cook some spicy Bombay potatoes in my electric wok, I can do a demo, will you let me sell my books? And they said, fine. So I was cooking in the shop, and the smell of the garlic got people to come and saw how easy it was, and they would buy the book.
Where was this? Where was the bookshop?
The first bookshop was in Tottenham Court Road.
Oh, wow.
And then after that, I went all over, every bookshop. I went up north to Bakewell, and I was travelling to anywhere where Waterstones and Swiss Cottage. I was everywhere. Once I got it right in one place, it becomes so much easier. So even Selfridges. Wow. I've done a demonstration at Harrods, and so after a while it becomes simpler. You know how to sell it.
Was it word of mouth? People just thought, this is brilliant, we need to get her in Harrods, Selfridges, we need to, were you still going out and trying to find the ways?
No, I was ringing up people because I think, yes, after a while people do recommend you, but also, luck plays such a big part in everything you do. So I remember the journalist from the Times 2 section came and had a session of cookery with me, and then wrote an amazing article about how wonderful my cookery and my book was. And so then he actually put in the paper that if you want a copy of the book, write into this address with your check. So I got like 500 checks in the post in the next 10-12 days, and so I started sending out the books like that. So it became very interesting. I didn't realise how creative one had to be and could be to get something out into the market. So I did, in a way. I had some formal training in marketing, but I think it was very intuitive.
obviously cookery is one part of what you do, but there's so many other parts to your life. And obviously you came as a very young woman. You obviously got 2 boys as well.
Yeah.
Did you have them quite early on? Or?
Yes, I had my first son a year and a half after coming here, so I had both the boys by the time I was 26.
So what would you say is your job? Or is it more of a career? You know, you've learned a skill set and you've kind of focused on it,
It's a very good question.
Yeah.
What is my job? I really now see my job as a catalyst for involving people to meet each other, to helping them change the trajectory that they're on by inspiring them, by giving them role models, by showing them what can be done, that nothing is impossible. It also really matches what I enjoy best, and I enjoy people best.
Yeah.
And so really what I do just fits in.
Okay. This is a question I'm going to ask everyone on this podcast. It's who or what would you say gave you your first big career break? What was that moment that you thought, oh, thank you, this is going to really help me?
Very good point. It's very hard to identify one, but I think, it was a cumulative effect of some media coverage. So when, the person from the Times wrote about me, it was such a good magazine or, newspaper to have something about you in. And then the Evening Standard cookery writer Lindsay Barham, I remember she published one of my recipes and wrote about it, and I didn't even know she was doing it. Suddenly I saw it in the Evening Standard.
Oh, wow.
And that gives you kind of credibility. And I think another point was when Cherie Blair actually was the Prime Minister's wife, and we invited her to come to the Asian Women of Achievement Award, to the inaugural award in 1999. And she actually said yes, and I think that kind of changed the trajectory of what I was doing.
What inspired you to set up your awards programmes? Because as you say, the first one was the Asian Women of Achievement Awards.
What inspired me was the fact I wanted to do something for women. I didn't know what it was going to be. But I just thought, why don't I set up this award programme? Indian women, Asian women are subjected to so many stereotypes.
Yeah.
And they can be quite insular, and I wanted to show the world that we have some amazing role model stories. They're not true to form in the way they're not just working at home and frying the onion bhajiyas and walking 2 steps behind their husbands. And so it was very much a vague thought that I suddenly translated into making into an event. Okay. And we're very lucky. Firstly, I had no idea how you organise an event and how you do these things, but I had been on several charity committees, so I had an idea in some ways how do you go to people and ask them. And so really it was so many people that I knew who helped me. And after that first award we held in 1999 where Cherie Blair came, and we had some really interesting nominations which we actually got by going and almost cajoling people to enter.
Right.
Because they're 2 things. People, when there's something new, they're interested. But then they also want to watch and see, is this going to be worthwhile? So it's really a chicken and egg situation because it's very hard to become known and to do something new because people are waiting to watch to see how you grow.
Yeah.
But you can't grow unless they give you some support.
Absolutely.
So I was very grateful for the fact that Cherie came and she thought it was wonderful, and we managed to get into the Times the next day, a big picture of her. So I think, what made me really determined to do something was the people I met were so interesting, and I thought, how do I sustain this?
Yeah. I think also the categories are so varied, aren't they? Like you were saying, Indian women or Asian women get put into a stereotype, but you're looking at construction, you're looking at entrepreneurship, you're looking at media, looking at all the STEM categories. Yeah. Was that key in what you were doing, that you wanted it to be quite diverse, to just illustrate
Absolutely,
all the backgrounds?
Definitely wanted. I think we started off with only 5 or 6 categories because we didn't want to overextend ourselves and not find people in the category. And then actually it grew very organically. So we realised that really in the last 20 years so much has changed. So where we never had technology and digital media 20 years ago in that way. I think we're very proactive. We watch what's happening and then say, let's really bring this in.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, we've touched on this already. You're famous for getting people of influence to say yes to you. We've said Cherie Blair, but also the Countess of Wessex, Theresa May, Miriam Gonzalez, John Bercow, to name a few. Is there a particular knack, or is it just a huge dose of your own Pinky Lalani persistence? How do you do it?
I'm always kind of thinking, It's not really true. There are people who say no to me, but I think, it's nice. It's a nice myth, and I let it kind of grow. But no, I think it's just being yourself. And I think if people think you're doing something because you really believe in it, you've got warmth and passion, and it's not all about you. I think people are very much, happy to get involved.
So, but where did you start? Because I suppose people listening might think, I can't just call up Cherie Blair and ask if she wants to come to my summer fetes. But was there a process, or did you just knew someone who knew someone? Or
Yeah, I think very often it's much easier to start by contacting someone who knows that person. And there's some people who are easy, they're low-hanging fruit that are easier to get. I think sometimes politicians are easier to get because they have to be seen serving the public. If you want to go to the head of a very big corporation like Apple or Facebook, they don't have to come to women's events. Yeah, if you know them and they like it. But I think really politicians are a good way to start because they need that coverage. And I think also a lot of people are looking for interesting things to do. So actually, if you say something that's really exciting for them, they will come.
Yeah. There'll be a lot of people listening again that are scared and nervous, and when it comes to networking as well. And I think you're one of the finest networkers I've ever seen, Pinky. Can you offer any tips or advice as to how to... So you walk into a room, you don't necessarily know anybody, but you obviously you want to start up a conversation. How do you do it? What would your advice be?
Actually, I love walking into a room where I know no one. Actually, that gives me a real spurt of energy because then I have this whole room full of people that I can get to know and who may be interesting, some may be very dull. And I think it can be intimidating for people if everybody's in groups and you walk in and you don't know anyone, where do you break into a group? And I think really is to kind of position yourself near people who look as if they're quite bored with each other. You'll find that. They don't seem to, you can see that one person probably looking to see how can I get out of this conversation and then just start a conversation. And I think what really helps is asking people about themselves. What do you do?
Yeah.
You don't, and people love talking about themselves. If you start going in and saying, I'm so-and-so, I do this, it's not going to work that well. So I think it's very much putting the onus on other people and asking them.
So being inquisitive.
Absolutely, being curious. And I always ask people, I met somebody the other day and I was at a party and it was like quite strange, but this girl, I started asking her, how old her children were, what they did, and she said, it's really kind of you to ask me about my children, nobody ever does. And I thought to myself, how strange, I always ask people, so maybe people do things differently.
Yeah, I think, going from my own experience, especially when you have a career and you are ambitious and you want to carry on that trajectory, as soon as you then throw family and children into the mix, it becomes harder. So I guess, like she was saying, I don't know, maybe she doesn't want to talk about it, but do you think there is... how do you feel about women having families and the career-life balance? What was your experience? Or
Well, I didn't have to have that choice because I didn't start working really full-time till my children were quite, grown up, so I didn't... But I think women, if they want to, they should be able to, and they should be able to get all the support they want. I think it's really sad if you leave because you just don't get the support at work or in the family, or you feel intimidated by doing everything together. I think for those who want to, good for you. And I think everybody who works with us, we love to give them that flexibility because I think, we're not going to really make a difference in the world unless we change it for women. We all know that. And I feel really sad because we've been hearing the same sound bites for so long as the people are talking, we're encouraging women and we're recruiting them, but it's the pyramid, as they go up, they drop out. But I think you have to do something differently. If we do it the same way, it's not going to happen.
No, absolutely. And I think, like you say, it's good that they're saying we need to make these changes. We are kind of initiating these changes. But I think maybe it's leading by example. So, for example, when they put in shared parental leave for fathers and mothers, the CEO of a company needs to set the precedent. He needs to go and do that before anyone else is going to adopt it. Otherwise, it's a great idea that no one's adopting.
Absolutely. So, and there's a real danger there. And I think, again, if people are having children later, and so therefore, when they come back, if they take a few years off, the world's changed. And so I think, we're living in fast-moving, very fragile kind of economy where people feel very vulnerable. I'm so amazed at the amount of women who actually come and they network, but when you start talking to them, and I talk to a lot of people on a personal level, their stories come out and there's such, there's anxiety, there's, am I good enough? And I think you have to feel you're good enough, because if you don't, that self-belief is not there. You're never going to go anywhere.
Yeah, 100%. I think also it's the effect on the economy as well, isn't it? When you're balancing the cost of childcare against having a job, think about where your job will take you in 5 years' time as not working at all. I mean, it's so hard, obviously, because there's an awful lot of emotional impact and things like that as well. So it's no easy fix. But
I mean, I was talking to somebody the other day, and she is the head of a huge global brand, one of the biggest global brands. She's got triplets. And she says, putting them to a nursery is crippling. So even at her level, she can't really afford to put them into a nursery. So childcare has to be changed, because if you can't get your children looked after, there's no way you're going to be able to perform well at work.
Exactly. Just a few quick questions, just to kind of sum up. What would you describe as your greatest success?
I don't know whether I'd call it success. My children and my grandchildren, I think, are the best thing in my life. I think I spend time with them, and I'm very proud of my two sons and the way they conduct themselves. So I don't know whether you'd call that success, but that's the thing I feel most proud of.
That's so lovely to hear, because I mean, everything that you've achieved in your working life, and yet family is the most important.
Absolutely. I think for me, my work would mean nothing if I didn't have my family at the heart of it. And I think a lot of people are like that. For me, there is no separation between work and family. And that's why I do a lot of my work in my home. So I was talking to a woman just now this morning from Apple. She said, I'd love to meet up with you. She's doing some work in diversity. And I said, will you come to my house on a Friday when I have my team here? And, and she said, never had an invitation like that. And I said, well, that's the way I do it. And so therefore, I think also if you want to really succeed in life, whatever that success is, you have to be yourself. Authenticity and being comfortable with what you're doing is so important.
To be authentic is
Yes, absolutely. Because it's a word we're using more and more. And sometimes I cringe at that. But for me, if I don't do what I'm comfortable with, there's no flow, and then people pick that up.
There's no longevity to it either, is there? You can't sustain something that's a facade.
No. If you tell me to sit in a room and not say a word to anybody because that's the way it has to be, well, don't count me in, because I would die. So I'd rather not be somewhere where I can't actually have a conversation.
Yeah, and people won't know this, but you do have your team round on a Friday. You cook for them, don't you?
Every Friday.
They're all here.
Every Friday.
You cook lunch.
Yes, I cook lunch, and then I also tell other people who want to meet me to come on the Friday, so then they get to meet my team. We had a girl from the Women of Future, one of our last year's shortlist, and she said, I'd love to come for tea. I said, come for tea. So I set the table up for tea, and we had tea after having had lunch. I went to the Argentinian embassy the other day for a business lunch, and so I've got 3 women from the embassy coming on a Friday. And so I think it's really nice because people like coming where they're going to meet different people. So I think the real trick of being successful is how well you can put together people who are very diverse, who you wouldn't meet otherwise. I think they call it the strength of weak ties.
Yeah.
So people, we all try to go to people we know, but I think it's the people who you don't know that are going to give you those new ideas, who are going to actually energize you in a different way.
Yeah. I think it's also the environment, isn't it? It's the warmth you have in a home as compared to the sterile office space or wherever it is that you work. It's actually a different, it makes you feel relaxed, right? You actually breathe better and things like that. So.
And also I think when people invite you into their home, in a way, subconsciously you think they trust me, they like me, because people don't want to invite people into private spaces where they're not comfortable with them.
Yeah,
and I think that also, in a way, before you've even come to someone's home, you think, oh, she must really like me to invite me over. And I love doing, every time I do several lunches where I mix up all our Women of the Future. And we have one this summer coming up for the Asian women, but the list is so long. And I know if you invite 60 people, 30 will say yes and, whatever. But I need to have about 5 of those because I find they are the best way to market what we do. We don't even have to do any marketing, just getting people to tell their stories about their experience with us. I've learned that is my most, powerful marketing tool.
Speaks for itself.
Absolutely.
Okay, so and what's your greatest failure?
I never think of anything as failure. I always think of that's the way I wouldn't do that again. So I never see anything as a failure. I'm very much in that Edison and the light bulb. He didn't say they were all failures. He said those were ways of not doing it. So,
you learn from your experiences.
Yeah, and I don't think, I find the word failure incredibly soul destroying, because you feel, I don't think, there's no failure in life.
I agree. After all these years, the mantra of Women of the Future programme is kindness and collaborations. From 1999 to now, in 2019, it's a long time. But what does it mean to you now? What does kindness and collaboration mean to you? Has it changed, or is it still the same?
No, I think kindness is something that never changes. It's forever eternal. It's something that people, what goes from the heart goes to somebody else's heart. And so when people say, how do you define kindness? I think defining kindness is difficult. You just know when somebody's kind. You also know when somebody's unkind. And I think it's the most powerful tool we have to actually change our lives. Because if you look at ancient philosophers to people today, the kindness of others that makes our lives much better, enhances what we do, opens a door, actually makes us feel good when we're really down. So I think it's so intuitive, it's so human. And yet we live in a world where sometimes kindness is seen as a softness, as a weak. You can't be successful if you're kind. And I take the totally reverse view. And I love it when very big, hard-hitting corporations are actually really energized by our mantra of kindness, because it gives power to everyone, from the junior person right to the senior, because it's an equalizer.
Do you think it comes naturally, kindness? Or is it
I think it does.
I think adopt or...
No, I think, I know when I do something kind, I feel good. So there's a wonderful saying, the fragrance always stays in the hand that gives the rose. And so when nobody can feel good when they've been unkind, and I think it comes naturally. I think we work over time to perhaps suppress being too kind. You think it'll be misconstrued. And, we live in a society where everybody is passing judgment on others without really knowing all the facts. But I still think it's worth taking the risk. Every single time I will do kindness over nothing or unkindness. I mean, I would never do unkindness anyway, but sometimes you just take a part of, I won't do anything, I won't go. But I will still do kindness every single time. My whole view about life is we're in it for the long game, because we're all living much longer and people never forget kindness. So somebody who I've been nice to 20 years ago will even if they come into my life so many years down the line, will always remember that. And unkindness is also remembered. So I think it's our most powerful tool.
I also remember when I went to the shortlist announcement last year for Women of the Future Awards, you said you should do something kind every day that can't be repaid. Yeah. So whether that's buying someone a cup of coffee or just doing something small, but you should take on that notion and pay it forward, essentially, which I think is a lovely thing to do.
Yeah. But I say that, and I think everybody must know that, and they must do it. But I'm so amazed that people don't really do that. So every day I leave the house with 5 chocolates, and I will give it to 5 people. So yesterday I was in a company, and the receptionist was so sweet. She said, "Are you Pinky?" with a big smile, and said, "Do I mind? Here's a chocolate for you, and here's a chocolate for the other reception," because she was just sitting there. And I think it really makes you feel, and she said, "This has really made my day." And just the same way, if you go into an office and somebody doesn't greet you very well, it's not unkindness, but it doesn't make you feel good. So I think we also need to call it out. So when somebody's nice to me, I immediately tell them that, and I feed back, even though they haven't asked for feedback. Today I was talking to somebody at a hospital. She was really helpful. So I said, "Can you give me your email? I'd like to write an email saying thank you to you, and you can show that to your boss." So it meant a little bit of effort, but it's so small.
Because we're all really quick to complain, aren't we? We'll do it in a heartbeat, but when it actually comes to saying thank you for something, we don't do it. We don't actually say, "Oh, thank you, that was really lovely." Even just the smallest thing, those 2 words, we just don't do it.
I'm very surprised, and I'm very happy that obviously I work with people who take it very seriously. And so somebody recently, a computer guy, told me, he said, "My God, somebody from your team came back and thanked me so profusely. Nobody does that." And that's interesting, because that's just what you've said. But I think in the world, we live in worlds where we are attracted to people like ourselves, or people who have the same values. And for me, the values of integrity, of kindness, of caring, of respect are absolutely without doubt, the most important thing that we need at the heart of what we do. And so the people I meet mostly are people like that, because I don't think you can resonate with people who have very different values.
Yeah. Is there anything that scares you anymore?
Fortunately, no. I guess what scares me and not where work and things. I think as a mother and a grandmother and a wife, you're always worried about your family. So I'm forever worrying about them in every little way. But no, I don't think so, because I think also have very deep underpinning faith in, I guess, a spiritual, religious faith that everything that's happened happens for a reason, and it's the way we really look at it. And I think, whenever you've got good intentions, it's again a very ancient philosophy in Islam and Hinduism also, that the law of intention and desire. So when you actually have good intention, then good things happen. And sometimes things may go wrong, but I think, in the long run you realize why it did go wrong. So very early in my career, I lost so much of my hearing, so I have so little hearing. And I remember at the beginning I thought to myself, I love people, I love talking, and how can I carry on? This you're talking about 25 years ago.
Yeah.
I don't know what gave me the courage to carry on, but I got these hearing aids, and I tell people up front, and people become kinder because they realize you're vulnerable. And so I think it happened for a reason. It's made me much more sensitive to other people's disabilities, which we may not know. I think something sometimes happens to you which raises your awareness of others. So I think also I'm always conscious of the way somebody's treated me. And so if I think they've treated me less than nicely, it makes me aware as to maybe why. I won't condemn it, but I'll say maybe there was a reason, who knows where they were coming from.
Yeah, I've seen somewhere where they said sometimes you think quiet people are insolent or they're just rude, but sometimes they've actually got their own insecurities, and you need to, like you've just said, you need to bear in mind that there might be more to it than actually
meets the eye. And everybody has a story, and I'm so privileged to meet so many people who trust what we do, so they open up with their stories, and sometimes they don't want to, because then it exposes them. Some people don't mind being exposed, some people do. But I think the best way to really make people come together is bringing diverse lots together. So I love it when I go to a place and I actually stand up there and speak for 100 people and say, if anybody wants to come to my house, just email me. And you'd be surprised, there will be a lot of people, but not as many as you would expect. And that's because some of them felt, I don't have the courage, she said that, maybe she didn't mean it. And yet when they do come and they meet other people and they go off and have their own, nothing pleases me more than somebody who's been part of our network, who's gone off and done amazing things with somebody else from the network, and I don't even know about it. And I don't want to be part of every narrative. And so it's letting people go, and I think that comes probably with age, and you kind of realize that you can't hold on to everybody, that everything you've done is not your victory. It's actually so many people have played a part in the result, and I realize I've got a fantastic team, and everything I do really is because they are the most incredible, supportive people that I know.
Going back to your hearing, were you scared then? Was it an illness? Or?
No. It would have been easier if it was an illness, because then you think that's what caused it. So when it first started going, I thought to myself, it was probably a virus and it'll come back. And actually, when I went for an audiology test, he said, no, it's nerve deafness. Oh, wow. And you have to wear hearing aids. And I think the first thing with hearing aids, everybody who has a hearing problem doesn't want to acknowledge it. So you say, you wear hearing aid, but you put it off and say, look, I can manage without it. But mine's so bad that if I take my 2 hearing aids off, I will not hear anything. Really? So in the night when I go to sleep and if the phone rings, there's just no way. Wow. So this scares me as if I'm in a hotel and I've got a meeting the next morning. I actually have to leave a message at the reception to say, can you wake me up if I don't pick up the phone? Can you come? And I give you permission to open the door and shake me, because otherwise I won't be. So I remember I was in Africa, in Nairobi, and they were, trying to call me, and I hadn't given this message, to them. I didn't pick up the phone, and they were worried. So So suddenly there were two of these men standing, but there were two of them because they said one couldn't come because of requirement. They're both standing over me and waking me up. And so, it can be quite scary because,
So you woke up with two men standing
I knew about me and I'm thinking, who are they? And so it was, they two had to be there, so one couldn't come in case. And also the one thing that does scare me is something happens to my hearing aid.
Right.
What would I do? So I have like a spare pair with me all the time because I wouldn't be able to have a conversation.
Yeah, I'm type 1 diabetic and I always panic about not having my pens or if they break. When you go on holiday, you're like, they can break in the luggage or whatever. Yeah, so it's the same kind of thing. So, you're reliant on them really, aren't you? To function.
Absolutely. And so it's not something, like if I'm saying some things you can pick up but somewhere else if you're on holiday, but nobody's going to make me a pair of hearing aids in a week or whatever. So I think people don't, and you overcome it by looking at the good things you've got in life and how you can take an attitude that, well, how do I make the best of it? So, several things have gone wrong with me so often, but it's kind of, in 2002 I had Bell's palsy, which is a bit like, you look as if you've had a stroke, but it's not a stroke, it's like it's the same virus that causes shingles and chickenpox.
Right.
So it normally happens at this time of the year, there's chickenpox around, so if you run down, you can get shingles or Bell's palsy. Yeah. And it was so debilitating because we had the Asian Women of Achievement Awards, and you dribble and your mouth looks very funny. People feel real sorry. And I remember, I've never forgotten the kindness. I went to the Asian Women of Achievement Awards, but I couldn't make the speech. And people were coming and saying, "Have you had a stroke?" But the two people who were there at the awards with me, and I will never ever forget how kind they were, was Tessa Jowell, who's one of the kindest people I have ever met in my life. And she was then actually Cabinet Minister for Culture, Art, and there was Sherry Blair, and they were both holding my hand saying, "It's amazing you've come." That I could have easily stayed at home thinking everybody will look at me and say, "What's wrong with you?"
There's the solidarity in that moment. It's just, just holding your hand.
They were holding my hand throughout saying, "Well done, you're here." And Tessa was, cabinet minister, but was there just being, I always, when I think of kindness, I think of her because she's one person. I think being kind is also replying to people. So when you send somebody an email, it's respectful to reply, but as busy as she was, she would always reply. Sherry will reply immediately. And to me, that shows respect and kindness.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also you said there was a funny story about your hearing where someone asked you, was it what your favourite curry was? Or?
Yeah, no, somebody asked me, how long do you take to make a curry? And I heard, how long have you been in the country? So I said 37 years or something. And then the other day, it was terrible. Somebody said to me her mother had gone on holiday. And I heard, she said my mother went on holiday and she had a ball. And she'd actually said she had a fall. And I said, "Oh, how wonderful." And she kind of looked at me as if to say, and so I kind of realised I had made a mistake. So I said, "Sorry, could you say that again?" And so you give so many totally wrong answers. So that's why it's nice to tell people up front.
Yeah. You get the humour part, the humorous part, that's how you deal with it, isn't it?
You have to, you're mortified that I'm saying, "God, your mother had a fall, how wonderful," kind of thing. And so she's, there's also, people, and there've been lots of those kind of incidents which I laugh about. But, in the whole, having done this for so long, there's so many amazing stories of people going out of the way of kindness, of opening a door. There's a wonderful saying also, saying, it's good to give when asked, but better to give unasked to understanding. So if we can spend 10 minutes every day thinking, who can I help? When they talk about loneliness being the worst disease of our time, just inviting somebody in for a coffee or telling someone, every time the Sainsbury's person, every week I get a delivery, I will never let any of them go away without giving them a biscuit or a chocolate. And sometimes I'm cooking and I said, "Do you want to take a little bit of a takeaway?" And so the guy comes back and he says, "Oh, my wife said, are you going to that Indian lady again? Maybe she'll give you something." And I think they're not used to that.
No, not at all.
So I always say, "Look, I've got this lovely Spanish chocolate somebody's brought me, or here's something."
So you must get regular delivery drivers where they're queuing up to come to
the it's really nice because, that's the way, I think you show people you care.
You really are quite remarkable. Do you acknowledge that? You know, because you're just one of a kind. I mean, everything you're saying makes perfect sense, and it gives me a lovely, warm feeling. But not everybody is.
But
that
I'm
kind of
surprised because for me it comes so naturally. So I think it's not that I'm making an effort to do this, and so therefore I think it must come naturally to everybody. But then I meet people who say, "Oh, I'm terrified of inviting people to my home," or "I haven't had anybody ever for dinner for the last 2 years," or something. Yeah. And I must have at least 4 times a week people coming and going. And if, last week Gemma and Alexis were working here, so we had lunch together, and Friday this thing came, and then somebody came for tea on Saturday. And I think, I always look at ways of doing things differently because I get bored very easily, and that's why I'm always thinking of new things with the awards. So we're doing the kindness list in Singapore. One of the new ideas we've had, which I hope we'll be able to, is the Commonwealth is, I think, something we need to be looking at. 53 countries, very young population, what's happening with Brexit. We should all be thinking of how we can help these women in the Commonwealth in some way, and we've got an amazing platform. I mean, I would be so proud to introduce any of them to you because you're inspiring, you're warm, you've got amazing listening skills. They would feel very honoured to meet you. So how are we going to? So we want to do an award this year, which will be Women from the Commonwealth. So anybody who's maybe in England, but maybe going back, so doing a PhD or doing a project, they can enter, and I think that would be wonderful for them. They would meet our network here, and they'd become our ambassadors in those countries. And we're now creating this platform, like a connecting platform, we're going to be using, so people will be able to connect if they're women of the future. So I think with LinkedIn and with all that, Facebook, you get so many requests. So I looked at how many contacts I have the other day in my LinkedIn. I don't even use it. I've got 3,800 or something. I'm saying every week I get 100 requests, but I don't even know half of them, so I don't really. And that's not, people are just reaching out, so you're not using that. But I think if everybody says the woman in Cambodia or the woman in Brunei connects to woman of the future in the UK, you're more likely to respond. Also it's who introduces you. I'm not very discerning, so I'll kind of say yes to anyone kind of thing, but there are people who will look and say, is this kosher? So I really think we want to look at ways where we can connect more people so that there's generation of ideas. And I think there's nothing to substitute for the warmth of somebody you can have a chat with.
Absolutely.
So, like if somebody sends me an email and I see their phone number there, and instead of emailing back sometimes, I'll just pick up the phone. So nobody does that.
No.
And I think if younger people see others doing it and think it's okay.
You need to lead by example again, don't you?
Again, then you think it's okay. And I think, but again, one word of caution, I think, the whole thing with emotional intelligence is to be able to judge when it's right to ask, when it's right to keep quiet, when it's, when should you wait.
Yes.
And I think that comes intuitively to some people, it comes with maturity, it comes with experience.
Yeah, I agree, very much so. I mean, not that I want you to stop, but I mean, is there anything left on your to-do list, Pinky? You probably should be winding down, no? Is it ramping up instead?
Definitely not. I don't want to hang up my boots. I always think there's going to be something more we can do. The ideas will come from, our networks, from people who want to do things and maybe don't have the capacity to. And I think it goes back to collaboration. So how do we work together with people, because I can't do everything on my own. We're a very small organisation. We're tiny. And I think, that we've got so far is there but for the grace of God go you and I. And I realise, and the one thing, message I really also want to get out to so many people is the thing that people should always be aware of is being arrogant. I think, it's absolutely the opposite of kindness is when you're arrogant. And yet so many people, when they're on top of the mountain, have reason to feel they can get away with arrogance. But remember, when you're on top of the mountain, the only way you can is come down. And you don't see that because everybody is paying you tribute and telling you you're wonderful. And never take those kind of things seriously. I think we all love accolades, but I think really in your heart of hearts you should know, that silent voice will tell you. And there's nothing worse that people, the quality I'm kind of abhor in people is arrogance. I think humility is something that is so It's warming, it's comforting, it's very endearing.
Yeah. I think, there's arrogance and there's confidence, isn't it? You shouldn't confuse the two, but like you say, it's the old adage of be nice to the people you meet on the way up, because you're sure as hell meet them on the way back down again.
And it's funny, because so many people that this year, the Asian Women of Achievement, we were just so thrilled. We had one of our first winners was there, and she presented an award. She's a real rock star in the medical field. Her name is Dame Parveen Kumar. Just amazing. And she came and presented an award. And that's 20 years. And there's not many networks where people keep in touch. I think, what we really need is, in life, is, one must look for long-term relationships. And they can only be sustained with a lot of endeavour and personal, you actually take time. If you don't take time to be in touch with people, relationships are like plants. If you don't water them, they die. So, it's people don't say, oh gosh, you managed to keep in touch. I managed to keep in touch with a lot of people, but there's so many people that have dropped off now because the network has become wider and wider. And I can't remember everyone's name the way I used to, because then I knew 20 people, so I knew everything about everybody. But what excites me, Kim, is when I go out and meet an interesting person and say, how can we use them? Sometimes you meet like CEOs of companies and you say, they're so involved in their business, they have a big agenda. How can we get them involved with us? And there's also the weakest need the strong and the strongest need the weak. I think also the one thing I feel very strongly about now is how careful we have to be before we shoot out social media, because it can ruin lives. And we have to be much more circumspect about the way we behave on social media.
We were talking earlier about how authenticity is a buzzword. How do you feel about things like mindfulness and, the kind of the trends that are happening nowadays with mental health and things like that? Do you think, obviously, kindness and mindfulness and they're all linked, really, aren't they?
They are,
intrinsically.
Really. So. Because if you're not mindful, you wouldn't be kind. You can't just be kind without being aware of and being mindful of others. And it's so easy when you start going down that path. So, it starts off as a competence that you have to work on. I'm going to be nice, I'm going to pay a compliment. So you're consciously doing it. And then it starts flowing, and so you do it without really thinking.
Yeah.
But the main thing is to really do it so that it absolutely just flows without, it needs no subconscious thought even, it just goes through. So you say, how do I really think about other people every day? And I know we have to think of ourselves, we have to look after ourselves. But I think that people have become very self-obsessed, and you meet so many people and you think, oh, she's so self-absorbed. And even if they pretend not to be, they kind of take a very cursory interest in what you're doing, but they're just waiting for you to finish till they put in what they know. And I laugh at social media. There's so many people who put I went here so humbled and honoured to get this award. And I think this humbled and honoured doesn't go together. They're basically, why would you put it on social media? I got this award, I'm humbled and honoured. See, I got this award, I'm really so delighted because I've worked so hard and it's a wonderful act. Say, I'm humbled and honoured. And we have such a laugh about humbled and honoured.
Yeah. It makes me laugh as well. People say, oh, you're really lucky. And you think, well, it's amazing how hard I have to work to be lucky. Because like you were saying earlier, lucky, there is an element of luck to everything.
Huge,
but you do have to work hard to have these opportunities come your way, don't you?
Absolutely. So, and I think, what also we need to be much more creative in the way we think of how we do things. So even though I'm much older, so diversity is great. I can tick the box on being older, but I still think it doesn't stop creativity. I can do it in a different way, whereas other people would be creative maybe with technology. So I think whatever stage of life you're at, there are things that work for you at that stage. So, we love the vivacity and energy and passion of young people because they think, there's a wonderful saying by Rumi, I think, which says, when I was young, I thought I could change the world. Now I'm older, I know I can only change myself.
That's lovely.
And that's so true because really, ultimately, we're not going to be able to change anybody. It's only the way we look at it. And I love young people because they think, oh, they're not scared of anything. They've never had too many things that have not worked. As you get older, you get much more circumspect. You lose people you know, you've had illnesses, your family. And so therefore you're much more measured. But I still think one shouldn't lose passion and, energy and enthusiasm. I hate meeting cold, like sterile people who kind of almost, you have to, it's like extracting teeth to get some kind of enthusiasm or a compliment from them. So, no, it's a wonderful journey. Like, I was really excited about you coming today because I really look forward to it. And, you're just so amazing in the way the energy you radiate. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you very much for agreeing to do it. It's been such a pleasure listening to you.
No, well, thank you. And no, you haven't eaten anything. Can I make you a sandwich or something?
No, fine, thank you. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Women of the Future podcast. If you enjoyed it, please hit the subscribe button. And while you're there, why not give us a rating and review? You know you want to. For more about the Women of the Future Awards, network and initiative, please visit www.womenofthefuture.co.uk. See you soon.